The cost of living in Canada versus the US, part two. It is way, way cheaper to buy a home in Florida than it is in Ontario, or at least in Toronto and the GTA. Because the prices of houses and just homes in general in Ontario and the GTA in particular have been insane since like the mid 2000s. Utilities, phone, that kind of stuff, also way cheaper in Florida, but also keep in mind that the sales tax is like double in Ontario than it is in Florida. And remember, in order to make an accurate comparison for cost of living, you have to be looking at it, making US dollars, spending US dollars, making Canadian dollars and spending Canadian dollars, because if you're taking US pricing and you're converting it into Canadian, it's going to be astronomical. But Canadian dollar has been very low for the past couple years. Generally, I find the cost of extracurricular activities here in South Florida to be cheaper than what we were paying in Toronto and the GTA. And the ever so popular health insurance versus free healthcare, guys, I can promise you, and I know my Canadians who have actual experience with this will understand and attest to this, that the amount of money that you save not paying to the Canadian government in taxes is more than whatever money you're dishing out for a pretty good health insurance in the United States. It's also way cheaper to buy a car in the US than it is in Canada. And also remember, I'm specifically talking about South Florida. It is probably way more affordable to live in other parts of the US, like Texas, for example. Home maintenance fees like landscaping, pool maintenance, that kind of stuff is a lot cheaper in Florida than in Toronto.
The cost of living in this country is currently, it's not going to be, it is currently unsustainable. And there are people that they know this, but then they'll still look at somebody else that's struggling and then tell them they're not doing good enough. I want you to imagine somebody that makes $75,000 a year. That's a pretty high up wage in terms of like top earners in this country, $75,000 a year. And we're going to go through some things here. This is a person with no debt outside of a car. And please don't hit me with the, you can go buy a car for, shut up, you can't, shut up, stop saying ridiculous things. An entry-level decent car is $30,000. So this person who puts $200 a month into insurance and they pay 5% into their 401k, because shut up, people should be able to put money into their retirement. Because if you're not doing it now, you're never going to get to start doing it later. So after those two things come out of their paycheck and their taxes are paid, they bring home $53,850 a year from a $75,000 paycheck. Average rent in my state for a one-bedroom apartment, because an adult should be able to live by themselves, $1,700. That car payment at 6% for an entry-level, very reasonable sedan, nothing fancy, that car payment's $579 a month. Car insurance, $240 or so a month for a lot of vehicles in this day and age. You're a young person, you've got a nice job, but the insurance companies still want to screw you over. Food. You only cook at home. You never, ever go out. You only cook at home and you only eat decent quality food, because a human being should be allowed to eat decent quality food. You pay $879 a month for that. You spend $250 a month in gas. You wear and tear on your car $100 a month. $80 for your phone, $80 for your internet, $175 a month for your electricity, $70 for your water, $20 for your cash. You make $75,000 a year, and outside of a car payment, you have zero debt. Do you know how much money you have left over annually at a $75,000 wage? You do nothing. You don't own a Netflix. You don't go out on a date. You don't pay to go to a park. You don't go watch a movie. You do nothing. If you can't find it on the internet for free, you don't get to do it. If you can't cook it at home for your $800, you don't get to do it. You have $3,700 left over annually. That's like $320 a month. And there's going to be, well, that's $300. Shut up. Shut your stupid, contrarian, edgelord mouth. That's not a doctor bill, because God knows, just because we have insurance doesn't mean that we don't still pay far out the ass when we go to the doctors. People like to be entertained. They want to date. They want to. There's those of you out there that will tell somebody living like this on $75,000 a year before taxes that they are not doing what they're supposed to do, that they should get a second job, that they should get a side hustle, that they should get a better job. And the fact that you would look at somebody with no debt other than a car and say something like this to them means objectively you're a moron and you live in a fantasy world. This is unsustainable.
I moved from Toronto, Canada to South Florida almost 3 years ago, and let's talk about healthcare. I get asked this question all the time. The Canadian healthcare system sucks. It doesn't just suck. It's terrible now. It is horrendous now. And contrary to popular belief in the United States, it is not free. The taxes that Canadians pay are so much higher than what they pay in the United States. And that comment, both of those comments about the Canadian healthcare system sucking and the taxes always trigger people, and people always fight me in the comments. Anyway, the Canadian healthcare system as it is right now is absolutely atrocious. For anybody who truly needs the system for very important things, it has failed so many people, and every single Canadian knows somebody who had, and somebody close to them, if not themselves, a terrible experience within the system. The wait times are insane. If you're not like on death's door, you're not going to get treatment for a lot of things. And it's not because the doctors are bad or anything like that. It's there's no money. Guys, the socialist, like universal healthcare system that Canada has in place doesn't have enough money. And the people suffer significantly. I've seen it with my mom. I've seen it with my dad. I've seen it with my best friend. It's wild. A lot of rich people, especially if they live close to the border, the US border, they will pay out of pocket to go be seen in a US hospital or clinic like the Cleveland Clinic or the Mayo Clinic. Many Canadians will cross over into Buffalo, for example, for a simple MRI because the wait time in Canada is months. The wait time for an ENT for your child is months. The system is failing, and Canadians are still paying an enormous amount of taxes. So then people say, well, what about having to pay for private insurance in the US? And to that, I have two responses. The first one is I've learned that most Americans have pretty good coverage from whatever company they work for. And yes, sometimes they have to opt in to get better care, but it's still better than Canada. And two, for those people who don't have that ability, but are paying out of pocket for private health insurance, the money that you save not paying a high tax rate in Canada more than covers whatever you're paying on a monthly basis to have private health insurance. And I also understand, I've already had this experience a couple of times, how insurance companies, health insurance companies in particular, are such a scam, and they really try to squeeze people, and you absolutely have to be very diligent. I would still pick this over that.